Power of the underground.
Sea level datum is a myth. We don't know sea level. The reason is that sea level is constantly falling as seas recede. Seas around the world have been receding for perhaps millions of years. Receding seas, believe it or not, is why we have to keep dredging our harbors. All harbor authorities have to dredge and keep dredging in order to keep shipping channels open ahead of receding seas. A recent example, for instance, the aircraft carrier Intrepid. It was docked for 24 years on the Hudson at Pier 86. Recent attempts to move the ship proved futile until the dredges were called in to clear a passage. Dredging has been in existence for thousands of years. Dredging operations in ancient times, however, were not as sophisticated as they are today, so as a result, many ancient harbors were lost to the receding seas. To understand the phenomena, we have to go back in time to explore successive eras in history. This is the only way to see where sea levels were back then for the purposes of comparison with where they are today. Only historical data can reveal the recession of the seas. From that data, we can interpret and better understand how much seas have receded throughout history. The ancient city of Ephesus was established in about the 10th century BC. It was established on lowlands on the Aegean Sea. The surrounding lowlands comprised malarial salt marshes. The early city had a spacious harbor, was often flooded by the tides. In the 1st century AD, St. Paul visited Ephesus and spent perhaps 3 years there spreading the gospel. As time went on, it was necessary to dredge the harbor to maintain shipping access. This proved a formidable task. For well over 100 years, ending in the early Christian era, efforts were made to dredge the harbor to offset the effects of the receding sea. Attalus made the first attempt to keep the harbor open. Nero, the proconsul, tried next, and finally, the Emperor Hadrian. All these successive attempts proved futile, and finally, the harbor project was abandoned. Ephesus lost its harbor forever. Today, Ephesus is 6 miles inland, left behind by the receding sea. Today, as we stand and look across the miles of land that was once part of the Aegean, you get a grasp of how much the sea has retreated in 2,000 years. The salt marshes are also gone with the receding sea. Today, dredging operations are a major expense in keeping harbors open. The New York Port Authority will be spending billions in the years to come to keep the harbor channels open. As the sea recedes, the cost of dredging escalates. The reasons are twofold. Container vessels keep getting larger and larger, demanding more depth. On the other hand, the sea's recession demands that channel have to be dredged deeper and deeper. Now the New York Port Authority is having to blast bedrock to get the greater depth demanded by the larger ships. The challenge for the future is to keep the harbor open at all costs. The Suez Canal was opened in 1869 with an average depth of 22 feet. Over the last 100 years, they have dredged to 30 feet and then to 40. Now they are dredging to 70 feet to accommodate megaships. All this dredging is done at great cost to keep the canal open. The dredging keeps on because it is necessary for the operation. The Canal Authority, like the New York Port Authority, however, knows nothing about the global phenomenon of receding seas. While the dredging goes on in the Suez Canal, the sea levels in the Red Sea and the Mediterranean have been falling. How do I know this? Again, history. We have to look back at history. Flight of the Israelites across the Red Sea tells us a lot about the sea's recession since that time in biblical history. The receding seas affects all aspects of our lives. So learn more on our next release, which is part 5 of The Mysterious Receding Seas.